to think oats were just a big bowl of sugary carbs.
I've seen this guy's videos, and he didn't used to think this. He's always liked oats, man. So a doctor has changed his mind on some foods that he used to like, and now he doesn't. What does this look like to me as a gut health expert? What can we say about what he's liking, what he's not liking? Let's get into it. So today I thought we'd look at this guy. I sometimes comment on his videos, and I see that I think he screenshotted one of my comments for this thing. But I know, so this guy I know, I only got introduced to him through Dr. Rangan Chatterjee, who I think is a more open-minded person than this guy is. This guy, as far as I remember, is extremely plant-based in his orientation, and for us as gut health experts, that's really not great, right? That's causing problems. So let's see what he has to say. Yeah.
Steak's gonna give you cancer. Eggs are gonna clog your arteries. Tofu's gonna give you man boobs. It is so confusing out there. I'm a doctor with a degree in nutrition, and even I get lost. Today, I'm breaking down the research on 5 of the most controversial foods that I've personally changed my mind on.
So I think there's a question, there's a premise to this video, which is that we have to base what we eat on the research. And what I would submit to you is that most of the nutritional research, especially all of it that's based in epidemiology, and most of it that's based in, otherwise, what else do you have aside from that? Lab rat studies and so on. It's interesting, and I would say it's worth looking at, but it's definitely not something to base your diet on, because the evidence there is very, very limited and confounded, as we'll get into here.
So you can decide whether you want them on your plate or not. Soy. Soy is one of the most misunderstood foods I've ever come across. I still see comments online all the time saying soy feminizes men. Soy.
There I am. Okay, so what did I say? I made myself so sick eating tofu as a vegan. The problem was never that I didn't like the taste. The problem was that I wasn't absorbing protein that isn't as bioavailable, and that I found in meat, and phytoestrogens in tofu were giving me man boobs. So I may be exaggerating with that a little bit. Like, it's not just the tofu; it was the whole, vegetarian vegan lifestyle, and that was contributing to imbalances in hormone levels that I had to deal with some time ago. So yeah, but listen, I was addicted to soy. I mean, it's absolutely. I came across something called the New Farm cookbook in the late 80s, early 90s. Early 90s it would have been in my case. Which was all about soy being the only complete protein on the, in the vegetable kingdom, and which is not true as it turns out. And I really got obsessed with tofu and making my own tofu and tempeh and soy milk and all kinds of things. And I'm just telling you, like, I did not thrive, right?
Causes cancer or messes up your hormones. A lot of the fear around soy comes from its isoflavones. These are natural plant compounds that fall into a group called phytoestrogens, meaning that they have a
phytoestrogen is plant estrogen, right? So it looks like actual estrogen, right? Fine.
Structure similar to the hormone estrogen. Now look, I get it. The name alone sounds super scary, but the effect is super weak, nowhere near as strong as the estrogen in your body.
So how do you know that, right? So we know that based on studies that are sort of limited length. Yeah, it's not as strong as HRT, that's obvious. But if you're taking the same food every day for years and years and years, will those effects build up over time? Will those toxins build up over time in the tissues? We don't know. We don't have the data to say one way or another, right?
Body makes, or medications like HRT. The scary headlines actually come from animal studies that use gigantic doses, far more than you would get in a block of tofu.
So again, if we want to replicate the exposure to humans of having the same food again and again and again, or overexposure to certain foods over time, or ancestrally inappropriate foods, right? So soy, as I've talked about in other videos, tofu was really, it was fed to animals for many, many years, but it was only introduced as sort of a human food in, I believe, the Ming Dynasty. It may have been a little bit before that, in China, where it was a sign of nobility. We can spend so much time working on this animal feed that it can actually be served at court. And how it was served, even how it's served in China today, is as a condiment, as a side dish to meat. Order mapo, I dare any vegan to go to China and order mapo tofu. You get a pork dish. I mean, it happened to me when I was vegetarian, right? So yeah, I mean, if you're eating tofu in an ancestrally appropriate, or at least a culturally appropriate way, ancestrally appropriate is 0. Culturally appropriate, if you're looking at China, might be a little bit as a side dish. I don't think it's going to be a problem for most people. But if you're using it as a staple of protein, I mean, it's just a bad idea. Or let me put it this way. We don't have any evidence to say that there are circumstances under which that might be safe.
have dozens of trials that show no risks, no changes in testosterone.
So let's look at this. It's putting an abstract on the screen. This is a meta-analysis. How long were these meta-analyses done, right? So like how long, like if you're looking at these clinical results, how long were the people studied, right? It's a matter of weeks or months, maybe a year. So do you have data for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years? I don't think so. And how long? Once I was eating, a massive amount of tofu and tempeh and soy milk a day, it's not like I stopped doing it after a week. That was my diet, right?
No effect on fertility, no man boobs. And when it comes to cancer, eating whole soy foods is actually linked to a lower risk of...
Linked. 10% reduced risk, RR 0.9. So below, in this kind of study, RR is below 0.7, we don't really care about. They're not indicative of anything other than the healthy user bias, right? So again, RR means risk reduction in this case, or risk ratio. Sometimes they use HR, hazard ratios, right? So what we're saying is against a control group, what did this look like? And we can only ever posit association. You can't posit causality from that. And what you'll find, as I've talked about in other videos, if you have a group of people who have access to tofu and who are eating tofu, they're probably doing other things. A, they're probably in a different income bracket than people who don't have access to tofu. And B, they're probably doing other things. They're probably, like, I know this dude goes to the gym. I know he does many other things. He doesn't just eat his tofu, right? So there are things that separate group A from group B that are not to do with soy consumption. So, and 0.9 is not a significant enough incidence, not a significant enough reduction in risk to even begin to posit causality. In fact, it might be a low enough risk reduction to eliminate the possibility of causality. It's not the soy that's doing that, right?
Breast, lung, and prostate cancer. So if you're purposely avoiding soy foods, you're missing out because they are incredibly nutritious.
No, I purposely avoid soy food, and I'm definitely not missing out. And so I say that as someone who, as I say, was addicted to soy for years. Like, it was a big part of my life. And made my life a lot worse. I'm really grateful to be done with that period of my life.
That have been a staple for thousands of years. Studies show that...
It hasn't been a staple food for thousands of years. And if it has, it's only in the context... So the Ming Dynasty is about 1,000 years ago, I want to say. That's roughly when it was introduced. And so maybe 1,000 years, maybe. And as I say, it was served alongside a lot of meat, right? So if you want to... And in the royal household, most people weren't having it. It was only had by the kings and queens to basically prove how luxurious they can be. They can turn even this... horse food, basically, we can turn that into a luxury dining experience, along with pork and other meats, right?
Regular soy eaters also have lower inflammation, healthier cholesterol, and better bone health.
Yeah, so I want to see RRs with this. Yeah, so when you're talking about RCTs, the question just becomes like, how big was the effect size and how long was the RCT for, right? And how rigorously controlled was it? Did you keep people in a lab? Did you really control exactly everything that they consumed? Do you know that the two groups were nutritionally equivalent aside from the soy consumption? So just showing me the conclusion paragraph, although bone reabsorption may be decelerated over short-term isoflavone consumption, periods longer than a year are probably needed to affect bone density, bone mineral density. So wait a sec. What they're saying is that actually it does decrease your bone density over short term. Soy isoflavones prevent osteoporosis-related bone loss in any weight status or treatment duration. That's a very hefty conclusion. I don't know if you can make that conclusion based on this study. I'd have to look into it. They increase bone mineral density in normal weight subjects and diminish bone reabsorption in overweight, obese individuals. Okay, so although bone reabsorption may be decelerated over short term, so in other words, they're saying they see some effects in the short term, but you probably need longer term to actually get a measurable effect. That's all they're saying. Yeah, I would need to see a lot more to be able to conclude this. But again, my assumption is, I'm going to have to see how well done these studies are, but this is a fairly small piece of evidence from what I can make out in favor of soy consumption.
Especially in postmenopausal women. However, not all soy is created equal.
So when you see that, especially in soy in postmenopausal women, like what's going on? What in the control group, what are they having? What is soy displacing? And if it's displacing like Cokes and McDonald's and stuff like that, like, yeah, no crap, no shit, Sherlock, I think is what we used to say in school, right? It's obvious that having something closer to a whole food, as most forms of soy would be, something that doesn't actually deplete bone mineral density as sugar does, as raw carbohydrates does, or high glycemic carbohydrates, yeah, anything is going to be better than that. So again, like I need to see those studies and understand exactly what's going on, but you're far from convincing me.
You want to go for organic. Soy, unfortunately, is one of the most heavily treated crops out
So
there.
don't eat it. Don't eat any of it. It's not a human appropriate food, right? Or at least it's not a food that is culturally appropriate for most of us, right? And the way that it's treated today, the way that it's grown, not just this sort of stuff, but the hybridization and the genetic modification and so on, like don't go anywhere near it.
There. Partly because it's often grown for animal feed. Secondly, you want to go for whole soy foods instead of processed soy snacks and fake meats that have additives, can disrupt your gut, and are definitely not what I recommend. I personally go for tofu.
Tofu is not a processed food. Tofu is a heavily processed food. And I say that as someone who made a lot of tofu in my time.
Tempeh, miso,
These are all processed, except for the edamame. All are processed foods, right?
edamame, because they keep a ton of their fiber and isoflavones intact.
Why do you want to keep a ton of fiber? So the fiber is going to block absorption of the minerals, right? So if you want less of whatever good stuff there might be, and there is good stuff in tofu, there's no question about it. But the more fiber you have that with, the less likely you are to actually get it, right?
I put them in stir fries, curries, diversity bowls, even desserts. My verdict, whole soy.
I've done all that stuff and more as a vegan. I'm really embarrassed to admit. Like the tofu cheesecake, I was addicted to certain tofu cheesecakes and I would make them all the time. No, my gut did not like it. My gut likes a soy-free lifestyle much, much, much better.
Foods are 100% on my plate.
They're off mine. Thank you very much.
If you're training or trying to stay strong as you get older, it's a brilliant way to mix up your proteins. Which brings me to something a little...
It's not. So the idea that you can actually absorb, we need better quality data, but most of the data on soy as a protein source is collected from young men, right? So if you're not a young, like under 25 man, we don't actually have good data that you're absorbing much protein from the tofu at all, right? And for my clients, like we would want you to stick to animal source protein if at all possible, including paneer for those of you who are vegetarian, but not. I mean, tofu, yeah, in a pinch. Like if you want to be vegan for religious reasons or whatever other reasons, that's fine. We can talk about it, but you need to rotate with a lot of other things. You can't be reliant on just one source of protein, quote unquote. You're gonna have to do a lot of mixing and matching.
Personal. You might not know this, but I set myself a goal a while back to do a full Murph by the time I hit 40. And then I became a dad. And suddenly my fitness routine became holding Rafi in one arm or frying tofu, eggs with the boogeyman. A little bit closer to that Murph. Eggs. I used to think eggs were the boogeyman, packed with cholesterol, a couple of these a day, and I'll be seeing you in A&E in your 50s, clutching your chest, having a heart attack.
So that is complete nonsense. As I think in fairness, I think that's what he's about to say. Let's see what he says.
You see, one egg contains more cholesterol than 80 grams of chicken breast, 80 grams of beef steak, and a big wedge of cheese.
Who cares about cholesterol? So cholesterol is in every cell of your body. It is part of the membrane. It is necessary for life. We don't care about we certainly don't care about dietary cholesterol. And no one even measures cholesterol so much. We don't look at total cholesterol as a measurement anyway. Even the people who think that cholesterol is important to measure for heart disease, they're looking at ApoB, they're looking at Lp(a), they're looking at other things these days. They're not looking at just the raw cholesterol number, right?
Bind. But we now know that for most people, the cholesterol you eat has a very small effect on the cholesterol level in your blood.
That's right, because it's all regulated by the liver. And if you eat less cholesterol, your liver will just make more because it has to, because cholesterol is necessary for life, right?
That's because your body makes most of its own cholesterol and largely excretes any excess dietary cholesterol in your poop. This explains why most recent studies show that eating 1 to 2 eggs a day doesn't raise the heart. 1 to
2 eggs is a bit of a joke, right? I myself, today I just broke my fast. I had 5 egg yolks and maybe the equivalent of 1 or 2 egg whites. And I might have another, if I have another meal, which I might have another 5 egg yolks, right? So, and I don't see any problem. So 1 to 2, it's a bit of a joke, right? The fact that they move from 0 eggs to like 1 to 2 eggs just tells me that these guys, like, they're really basing their information on really faulty data. More research is needed on the positive associations between egg consumption and heart failure and type 2 diabetes, right? there are ways to explain that, which is sort of the unhealthy user bias, right? So people have been told for years to avoid eggs. Who are the people who actually eat eggs? They are the people who are more likely to drink, more likely to smoke, less likely to exercise, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this kind of data is just, it's just complete junk.
Heart disease risk in healthy people. But there is nuance to this. There is a small group of people known as hyperresponders. They tend to absorb more of the cholesterol and food than the average person.
And why is that a problem? I don't think it's a problem, right? I'm a hyperresponder. My LDL is 11.9 in the British system, which is what, 450, 500, and my heart calcification is 0 at the age of 50, right? So coronary artery calcification is 0. That's the score.
If that's you, or you've been told you have high cholesterol, it might be worth cutting out cholesterol-rich foods from your diet for a few weeks and retesting your blood levels.
It's completely ridiculous because I can go on a high-fat, low-carb, vegan diet or vegetarian diet, or eliminate eggs completely, and I've done that in the past, and my cholesterol goes up, it doesn't go down. So I don't think these people have even the slightest clue what they're talking about.
If you don't have high cholesterol, 1 to 2 eggs a day on average is...
If you do have high cholesterol like me, 10 to 20 eggs a day, fine.
Perfectly fine. Better still, eggs are a brilliant food. You get high quality protein in the whites. The yolks give you vitamin B.
So mostly I agree with this. What I'm a little bit concerned about is the sort of plant proteins that end up and the omega-6 fats that end up in the egg yolks. I don't think there's a really nice way around that, because where I live, all the chickens are fed corn and soy and crap that I would prefer they not be fed, but it is what it is. So yeah, I do have concerns about eggs, and we do take eggs out for some people, especially the egg white, which some people can have reactions to, tummy reactions to in the gut.
12, selenium, and brain-healthy carotenoids. The beauty of eggs is that you can pair them with many other nutrient-rich ingredients.
Like more eggs, right?
Like a shakshuka with lycopene-rich tomatoes, or one of my personal favorites, veg-rich sweet potato frittata that gives gorgeous variety that your gut microbes will absolutely love.
If we're trading recipes, what I did today, I did a carnivore bread. So that was egg whites and cheese and a lot of spices, and you sort of mix that up and you bake it. The only problem with that recipe is, geez, does it stick? Make sure you're using grease-proof paper or something like that. Boy, it sticks to, it's just hard to clean the dishes afterwards. I also made a custard. So that was some glycine powder for sweetener, 5 egg yolks, some heavy cream, turn it into a custard, put it in the fridge, delicious stuff. Yeah, that's what I did with the eggs. So the 5 egg yolks were in the custard and the 5 egg whites were in the carnivore bread.
Verdict, eggs are on my plate on average 1 to 2 a day.
So the problem with this kind of suggestion, just remember, is that eggs are a good food, but they're not the best source of protein. So we'll see, and this happens to me almost every day, someone will come across my door and will say, I'll ask where you're getting your protein from, and they'll say, I'm getting it from eggs, and I say, how many eggs do you have a day? And they'll say 1 to 2, and I'll say, okay, where else are you getting your protein from? And they say like salads and vegetables and things like that, which aren't protein sources, right? So an egg has 6 grams of protein-ish. In a meal, especially for someone who's trying to improve their gut health, we're looking for 25 to 30 grams of protein. If you're going to eat, you want you to eat a good amount of protein. And so that's 5 eggs as a minimum, right? Or 4 to 5 eggs, depends if it's a smaller person, if it's a woman. Maybe you can get away with 4, but most of these people aren't having more than 1, right? Maybe 2. That's a problem.
Part of a hugely diverse diet with tons of fiber. Red wine, a staple of the Mediterranean diet. Picture that red checkered cloth.
I think we're going to agree on this, so I'm not really going to spend much time. Maybe I'll forward red wine. So I think he's going to say it is not on the plate, right? Let me just forward a little bit.
Worth it. If you are looking for drinks that are high in polyphenols, try green tea or cacao. Both have more polyphenols than red wine. My verdict, it's a lovely drink to enjoy, but it's not a health staple. It's not on my plate or next to my plate. Oats.
Yeah, fine. We agree. Oh, God. Oats. Jesus Christ. Okay. Jesus. Okay. We agree on red wine. Let me just give him the credit there. There's no data indicating that any amount of alcohol is safe for human consumption, right? Doesn't mean you can't have it. There's no data saying that any amount of carbohydrates is safe for human consumption, but, I eat some, and lots of people can have some with no ill effects if you know what you're doing, right? So, yeah, alcohol is not a health food, right? Fine. Oats. Jesus Christ.
Every time I share a recipe with oats, it gets people talking. Blood sugar spiking, anti-nutrients, pesticides. I used to think oats were just a big bowl of sugary carbs.
I've seen this guy's videos, and he didn't used to think this. He's always liked oats, man.
That didn't do much. But oats are whole grains and they've got a lot more going on. They contain a special soluble fiber called beta-glucan. This forms a gel in your gut, slowing down digestion.
You know what else forms a gel in your gut? Not eating. Fasting. Yeah? So, because that gel in your gut is supposed to be there, right? It's called... it's structured water is part of it, but it's also the glycocalyx, right? So when we, maybe oats can help in certain weird circumstances that I haven't really seen. All I see is that when we take oats out of the diet, 100% of people get better. Like 100%. I've never seen someone who, was taking oats, we take the oats away and they get worse or they don't improve. Never ever seen that. Right?
Helping pull cholesterol out of your body, and it also feeds the
Why do you want to pull cholesterol out of your body? I mean, we just went through that your body needs cholesterol. We just went through that dietary cholesterol isn't such a big deal, right?
Microbes that keep your gut barrier strong. They have plant polyphenols called avanthramides that are unique to oats with antioxidant and anti-inflammatory effects that keep your blood vessels healthy. And look,
I mean, maybe like you'd have to show me a lot of evidence for that. I mean. Yeah, I don't buy it. Again, because oats are a food that was never really eaten until the British basically tried to kill the Scots, and the Scots had to find a staple food that would, keep them alive long enough to fight back. And oats is what they discovered, right? Or what they sort of were feeding horses before that, and then suddenly they started feeding themselves. So if you're trying to tell me, like you're trying to tell me to eat dog food, you're trying to tell me to eat horse food, you got to prove it to me. Like that's a huge burden of proof that that's safe to do. And you can't just say, oh, this contains X, Y, Z nutrient. Yeah, so what?
This isn't just theory. There are dozens of human trials that show around 3 grams of beta-glucans a day, roughly a bowl of oats, can lower your cholesterol.
Again, not an indicator we care about. We care zero about cholesterol.
Support your heart health, and it's one of those few...
Support the heart health by reducing cholesterol, right? So you've just repeated yourself. You said it reduces cholesterol, supports the heart health. How? By reducing cholesterol. It's just ridiculous.
Few foods that actually has an approved health claim for that effect. But it's not just any oats. The food industry has turned oats into a bit of a marketing tool. You'll see heart healthy on snack bars, cereal.
I'm going to forward because this is just silly.
Maple syrup is delicious. It's basically dessert for breakfast. You'll be hungry again by 10. Use them like a brilliant carbohydrate source to pair with other nutrient-rich foods. For example, in my overnight oats, I usually go for a quarter oats and 3/4 nuts, seeds like flax, chia, for more fiber.
This is just a huge bunch of anti-nutrients, man. And I'm saying this as someone, yes, I used to do this. I used to be the person who was taking all the berries, all the nuts, and I was suffering. I mean, it made my gut worse, made my autoimmune worse, made me hungry on the tennis courts. I mean, it's just a mess.
Meat. I used to think people should avoid those anti-nutrients like phytic acid, and makes oats a lot easier to digest. My verdict: oats
Sorry, what did you say
on my
about phytic acid?
bonus. Soak your oats.
Okay.
Soaking overnight actually helps.
So if you have to soak a food, if you have to treat a food in order to make it safe, is it a healthy food?
Break down some of those anti-nutrients like phytic acid and makes oats a lot easier to digest. My verdict: oats are on my plate with lots of toppings as a great carb source.
That's an oxymoron. Great carb source. The human body doesn't require any carbohydrates at all, right? So great carbohydrate source is not to have any. Yeah.
Red meat. I used to think people should avoid red meat as much as possible. There are studies that link high red meat intake with cancer, diabetes.
So I want to see RRs. Like, note to whoever's editing these videos, like, if you're showing me analyses, I want to actually see the effect size. So it says here, weak evidence of association between unprocessed meat consumption and colorectal cancer, breast cancer, et cetera, et cetera. So show me what exactly we're talking about when we say weak evidence of association. What is the hazard ratio? What is the risk ratio? Otherwise, how can we have an intelligent discussion here, right?
Dementia, and an overall high chance of dying earlier. Not a great thing. That's why processed meat are officially classed as carcinogenic up there.
That's complete nonsense, right? That's a 2018 document, which a WHO document. And by the way, I think the lead author on that, it died of cancer soon after this, right? She was a vegan. So humans have been processing meat in terms of salting and smoking and so on for like 500,000 years, for longer than we've been human. So it depends what you mean by processed meat. If you mean like Spam, I don't think anyone thinks Spam is healthy. But if you mean like meat that is just smoked or salted or whatever, I don't think anyone thinks that's unhealthy, right?
With smoking and unprocessed meat as probably carcinogenic. But when you start digging into the research, it's not that clear cut. Even if studies show a 20% increase in risk, the actual effect is tiny. We're talking about one extra case of bowel cancer per 1,400 people who eat a lot of red meat every day. So it's not that red meat automatically...
But they're also eating other things, right? So I eat a lot of red meat. Well, I don't eat every day, but on days when I eat, I'm definitely eating a lot of red meat. And I don't think I'm at higher risk of, I don't know. Certain things no one's going to be able to say with any degree of certainty, but if you look at my blood markers, I'm certainly at no higher risk of cancer than the average person because I don't have all the carbs, I don't have the other nonsense. In other words, your study of high meat consumers is looking at McDonald's customers, and you're forgetting about the fact that they're not just having the burger patty, they're having the bun, they're having the fries, they're having the Coke, right?
Causes cancer is that heavy meat eating often goes hand in hand with other unhealthy habits.
Yeah, so he's not wrong. That's exactly what I just said.
People who eat the most red meat also tend to smoke more, exercise less, and eat fewer veggies.
So I hope he understands what he's saying, because it just discredits everything that he said in this video. Everything that's based on epidemiological data is discredited by what he's just said. I hope he understands that.
Basically, your typical steak-loving mate is often not your healthiest friend. Here's what actually matters. Number one, how much you're eating. Red meat is a really nutrient-dense food containing high-quality protein, zinc, B12, choline, hemine, and a lot more. But
So more importantly than that, red meat is the closest approximation to an ancestrally appropriate human diet, or to the ancestrally appropriate human staple foods, right? Which were giant mastodon, giant mammoths, giant wombats, giant camels, giant, massive animals that no longer exist since the last ice age ended about 12,000 years ago, right? So the best we can do from an ancestral perspective is fatty red meat, right? And it's also a very good choice for other reasons, namely because it's a polygastric. These are animals with several stomachs, and therefore the way they process their food is completely different. So you can feed the animal junk, not that I'm recommending you feed your animals junk, but you can feed them corn and soy and whatever, and they can actually process it in a way that it doesn't end up in the fat. It doesn't end up in their actual meat. So yeah, red meat is a great option for all kinds of reasons. And yeah, we don't limit it. We would never limit it. It's the most nutritious food.
People are actually eating way too much meat because they rely on it as their main protein source.
We really should. It is the only safe, or it is the closest to a completely safe protein source for most people. They're very, alpha-gal, and there are these exceptions. But I would say for 99% of the human population, red meat is the safest food and the best food, right? Because it's the most ancestrally appropriate food.
Over 1 kilo a week on average in the UK, and Americans eat over 100 kg per year. 100 kg per year, that's way too much. That's going to be
So I'm trying to think how much I eat. So I'm definitely more than, like 100 plus, I should say, because I'm going through about 1 kilo every 3 days with my fasting schedule. Let's say every 4 days. So you divide 360 by 4, what do you get? So maybe not 100. Maybe I'm eating less than the average American, but I'm eating quite a lot of red meat, right?
100 kg per year. That is a ton of... We need to comment on the meat first. Think about it. From an evolutionary process, we simply would not have had access to this.
That is not true, right? So this is one person's perspective. Let's see what they've highlighted. It is shown that while saturated fatty acids have been consumed by human... So what are you talking about? Because red meat is not saturated fatty acid. That's not what it is, right? Red meat, what we're eating is mostly MUFA, monounsaturated fatty acids. That's what it is, right? Some poly and some saturated. The saturated is less than 50%, right? So, this is an argument potentially against dairy consumption, against butter consumption, but it's not an argument against red meat consumption, right?
Much meat. Number 2, choose lean cuts of unprocessed.
No. Guys, for gut health, we really do need to prioritize fats, right? We really need to prioritize fats because that's what's missing. When we have tanked our gut health, when we have issues, it's often because we just don't have the right fats in our digestive tract. And so things like bone broth, really fatty bone broths with extra butter, those are the healing foods, right? Do not limit fat if you're struggling with your gut health. It's not going to help.
Meat. Processed meats are the real troublemakers because they form carcinogenic compounds that increase inflammation and oxidative stress. A piece of salami is not going to kill you, but it's a monthly treat rather than a weekly staple. And
I don't think so. I mean, these guys love to talk about the Mediterranean diet. Go and spend some time in Greece or in some of these islands that are, or Italy or whatever. They're having those processed meats every single day. They're only having fresh meat once a week. Right? They're having processed meat and processed cheese like every single day. So I don't buy it. I mean, again, you do what you want. I'm not here to tell anyone what to do. But if you're trying to say that processed meat is not healthy, we have to define our terms. What are we talking about? Are we talking about Spam, or are we talking about, traditionally cured, whatever, chorizo, whatever your processed meat of choice is? And if you're trying to say the latter is unhealthy, basically you're arguing against the Mediterranean diet. I mean, you should be aware of that, right?
Even in the unprocessed meat aisle, there is a vast difference between a ribeye steak and a lean venison loin.
Go for the ribeye every single time. The ribeye is the only cut of steak, the only cut of meat that is close to approximating the ancestrally appropriate macronutrient ratios, right? Which is, by calories, it's about 50%, it's about 70% fat. And by weight, it's about 50% fat, right? So that we would want the ribeye over the venison every single. If you want to take the venison, that's totally fine. It's a matter of choice, but you need to pair that with a lot of extra fats, olive oils if you like, butters, whatever you want. Otherwise, you're going to be hungry and you're going to crave carbohydrates, and that's going to mess up your gut further.
Ribeye has 10 times more saturated fat and less protein per 100 grams compared to venison. So
we don't care about saturated fats, right? I mean, our body is producing. If you have carbohydrates, your body is turning those carbohydrates into saturated fat in the liver, right? And that's not a place you want to be producing saturated fats, right? And palmitic or palmitoleic? No, palmitic acid, right? So yeah, don't do that. Don't have the carbohydrates. Eat the saturated fat, or it's combination. It's mostly MUFAs, monounsaturated fat, in the ancestrally appropriate diet, which is meat.
Impact of these meats is likely to be significantly different. And most importantly, it's about what you eat it with.
Don't eat meat with more meat, dude. Do not eat it with the broccoli. So I'm saying this, he's bringing up all these foods that kind of traumatized me, because when I was vegan and vegetarian, these are foods that I ate a lot of, and they really destroyed my health, right? Broccoli, I tanked my thyroid, my wife's thyroid, with broccoli. Oats, tanked everything with oats, right? So just be aware of the anti-nutrients in these things and rotate them. If you want to eat them, which I don't recommend, but if you do want to eat them, don't eat them daily, rotate them. The meat can stay on the plate. These other things have to come and go.
Olive oil, greens, lentils, colorful veg, and whole grains is...
Oh God, that looks completely awful. My goodness.
...not the same as a burger with fries and a fizzy drink. My verdict?
Yeah, no one is advocating the burger with fries and fizzy drink, guys.
Yes, lean red meat is on my plate and is one of my many core...
Okay, at least it's on his plate. I mean, I suppose that's a step forward. What to say about this video at the end? I don't know what to say, except that I'm grateful that these sort of pro-vegan, pro-veg people are finally coming around and accepting that some foods that they've traditionally classified as unhealthy are healthy, but it's taking them a long time. And they are, I mean, from my perspective, they are endangering people. Because we can't say, for me, if you come to me as a client, I can help you. I can sort of give you a personalized plan that I'm, 90% sure is going to suit you. And if it doesn't suit you, we can always make changes and so on. That's for you as an individual. But for the entire population, we can't say what's healthy and what's not healthy with any degree of certainty, right? And certainly things like nuts, raw salads, like broccoli, these are things that humans have only been consuming for a very, very short period of time. And I'm just not comfortable saying that it's healthy for all people. I just don't have any evidence to say that, right? The kind of stuff that, the kind of stuff that he's pointing to is extremely weak correlational data or mouse models or whatever, or really poorly controlled RCTs, right? So, I'm not here to tell anyone what to do, but if you're interested in your gut health, just be aware that all of these foods that they're telling you are good for your health and good for your gut probably aren't. And that we need to at least start, we can move from there, but we need to start with an ancestrally appropriate human diet, which is going to be a lot of fat, a lot of meat, and very little of anything else. Okay? So, some food for thought. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next one.